Hey guys, today we'll be going over 3D cameras, and the first camera type is 2.5D. This is basically when you have 3D assets, but you're only constricted to moving on two axes, usually forward and backwards and jumping. Side scrollers, 3D side scrollers will use this camera trope. Mortal Kombat X, a lot of fighting games will use this. There are some fighting games where you can still move in all three directions, kind of like Naruto. It's that would be I don't actually know. Naruto is weird. Now, this camera type is not to be confused with the 2D camera type of 3 or 2.5D, such as Five Nights at Freddy's. A lot of people were actually confused about that. They thought that Five Nights at Freddy's was actually a 3D game, but in a 2D game, 2.5D would consist of 3D models shown on the 2D image, kind of like Five Nights at Freddy's. The animations were 3D modeled, but they were transformed into 2D images, and they're just an animation sheet, basically. Now, the next type of camera for a 3D game that we're going to talk about is always over the shoulder, and this is actually sometimes used as a game mechanic. Some really good examples of this will be the Resident Evil or Gears of War. Grand Theft Auto sometimes uses this camera type, and Saints Row uses this camera type when you click in what is it, the left stick for Saints Row 2 to aim or get fine precision aiming. All it is to it is the camera is always behind the player, whether it be directly over the shoulder like Gears of War, or if it's a little bit off. It's still considered always over the shoulder, and it doesn't move. The only way that the camera rotates is when the player rotates. Next, we have a first-person camera or a first-person shooting camera, and this is going to be most of the games that are out there right now. All the Call of Duties, Battlefield, Super Hot, Overwatch, both the Destinies, both the Dishonored, GTA actually has it. GTA 5 has it for console and PC actually. This is when you're playing the games through the eye of the character that you're playing as. For Call of Duty, it's whatever soldier you're playing as. Super Hot, it's the main character in there. Destiny is your guardian that you have chosen. And there's also a 3D game mechanic called first person, unbroken first person, and we'll talk about that later. Next, we have a fixed camera, and really good examples of this would be like Until Dawn, where the camera sits at a certain location and the player moves around the playing area. Same thing with Devil May Cry, or Roblox, where the camera stays at a fixed location no matter how the player is moving. And lastly, we have a free rotating camera, and this actually has four different categories. I can only think of games for three of these categories. The first one is rotate alone, something like World of Warcraft, where you can rotate around the x-axis only, rotate around the camera, or sorry, around the player, but you can't look up and down. There's rotate and tilt, where you can look around, just like I explained before, but you can also look up and down, kind of like in GTA 5. Um, there's rotate and zoom. Super Mario 64 had this, where you can use the C buttons to zoom in on Mario and be right behind him. And then and there's also a 3D camera mechanic that Super Mario 64 had that we're going to talk about in the next category. It also used the C buttons. Lastly is rotate, tilt, and zoom. And now that I think about it, Super Mario would actually fall under this category since you could look around, but you can also zoom in and out. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've played that game. Onto the 3D camera mechanics. The first type that we have is camera centering, and you'll see this a lot in racing games or anytime you're driving a car. This is when you can free look around whatever you're in, either the car or the player. But once you stop, there's either a timeout or a button that you can press. Move the camera back to center, so called. For driving, such as GTA, if you look around your car and you stop, the camera will center back to the behind of the car. Next is camera lock on. This is say you're in a game and you have a whole bunch of enemies and you want to focus on one so you can kill that one and then move on to the next one. That's what would be called camera lock on. If you think back to Grand Theft Auto, I haven't played some of the more recent Grand Theft Autos. I believe the last one I played was San Andreas. So if you think back to San Andreas, when you look at somebody and you can lock onto them and see their health. That is a great example of camera lock on. Next, we have camera perspective switch, and this is used in games like Destiny or Overwatch. For Destiny, it's when you use your ultimate, or sorry, your supercharge, and then Overwatch is when you use your ult or ultimate. Um, Basically, the camera type changes. For Destiny, it's first person to third person. For same thing for Overwatch. Some characters have this, kind of like Bridget. she has this from normal play to when she uses her shield and it's over the shoulder. It just gives you reference, or it just allows you to look at things differently. Call of Duty didn't used to have this. It kind of you were able to play in third person, so but this only refers to in game, not things that you change in the settings or cutscenes. Lastly, we have a free look button, and this is used in Mario. That's the only game that I can think of at the moment. Basically, you had a button, I believe it was the down C button, where you can stop moving or it will cease your character control input, and you'll be able to look around. And that's about it for that camera type or that mechanic. I will see you guys in the next video. Friday we'll be going over the Mac and iOS exporter on an actual Mac. That way I can actually show you guys Xcode. I'll probably put an iCard with a timestamp hopefully in the last week's video of the Windows version of that. That way you guys can understand how to use Xcode. And that's about it. So I'll see you guys in the next video.